So let me just say this in advance. This is going to be somewhat of an stream, odd live stream, for a few reasons. So let me list them off. One, I'm doing this on my phone, so I'm holding my phone up. So if it gets a little shaky, then you understand I'm holding my phone. Two, I'm in San Francisco and I'm sitting here just chilling at the beach. Just had a great lunch. Let me show you where I'm at. I have no reason to be at the beach because I don't need a tan. Having said that, I was just at lunch with a good buddy of mine, good friend. We were talking. We always talk things theology, and we were talking about therapy and sort of being a believer. Should believers do therapy? All that kind of stuff, right? It's kind of there's sort of a couple different ways people process it, right? So either some people think every believer needs therapy. Some people think no, don't, all that kind of stuff, right? But as we were talking, I've had this thought for a while, and it really just came to fruition. I personally think therapy can be very beneficial for people. I think every believer needs the scriptures. Some believers do need therapy. I don't think that therapy is a fundamental thing that all believers must embrace, right? For a number of reasons, which I'm not going to go into in this particular point. But I do want to say this. I think beyond the need for therapy for some, I'm curious if there's a deeper issue going that's connected to something that Jesus said. We're supposed to imitate the Lord in everything, but on one thing, I don't think we should imitate him in this. And I apologize again if it's shaking. My hands are not steady. I'm in San Francisco near Sutro Babs at a beach, right? Very nice area. There's a lot of smash and grab around here, so you got to be careful. So my rental car is behind me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not fast. If they take it, I may be able to scam it. Hey, 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 that type of thing, right? But here's this thought that I have. Here's a concern that I have. I think, in many ways, the modern American Christian, whether you're evangelical or a mainline Christian, I think the modern believer in America has lost a sense of and a trust in the Spirit, the Bible, and the process of which we typically would call sanctification. Okay, I could be wrong. I'm sure this doesn't des- describe everyone, but here's a real concern that I have. And I think there's a lot of truth to this just based on my conversations with different people from across the country, just different reasons. And here's the sense that I have is that many people, Christians in particular, do not think that the process of change, which we typically call sanctification, the Bible calls it that, that includes a degree of suffering, right? That includes some difficulty, some challenges, okay? I do not think that many of us recognize that as a fundamental reality, right? So when Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me, at the time where he said that, the cross did not represent what it does to us now. So the people who heard that, the cross to them was only extreme suffering, suffocation, serious pain. So Jesus is saying, to follow me, you got to deny yourself and choose to suffer excruciating pain. That's the imagery they would have had, not this beautiful thing that we have where he you know, went to the cross for our benefit and so forth. And so I think there's this idea, it's a human nature, it's not just relegated to American Christianity, but there's an idea, I think, that many believers, believers do not have a vision for the category of difficulty, suffering, which we would now call like trauma and things like that. Bible calls it various trials of various kinds. I don't think we've lost, and maybe this is a product of COVID, where we've been so sheltered and so afraid of our fear of our own health and safety, that we've sort of lost a fundamental component of what it means to be a real disciple, right? So this is really cool. A bunch of people are just kind of looking at me because I'm just like a big black dude on the beach, and so you just got people just looking, not a lot, aspiring, right? This is what's happening. All right, let me be more. I told you this is gonna be a weird stream. I'm not like in the. I don't really care. I know that the analytics will be like, oh, if you don't get to the point in the first 30 seconds, then oh well, then don't watch it. I'm fine. I'm just wasting some time. My flight's not for a few hours. But I do think there's something to this. This is what I think. I think that we've lost that category of what it means to be a disciple through the suffering and challenges that we go through. And so even the category of like safe spaces, right? There's this idea that we must be safe at all times, protected from harm at all times, and all these things. And I get, as a person, a human being, yeah, who wants to be in any difficult situation? But we know that God works through all of those situations for our benefit. I mean, that was the point of James 2-5. And I think a lot of us have forgotten that. Well, we actually want a Christianity that doesn't make us, doesn't challenge us, doesn't, we always feel safe. And that's actually what heaven is for, right? So here's the concern that I have. I think that we've made a theology out of something that Jesus said that we weren't supposed to. So in Luke 22, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? And this is Jesus now about to, knowing that he's about to experience the full wrath of God. And in that experience, he's going to suffer the most that anyone has ever suffered, because up to this point, no one's ever been able to experience or withstand the full wrath of God. No one. It hasn't even been necessary. I mean, if you think of the flood, all the millions and millions of people and animals and the creation that were destroyed, that wasn't the full wrath of God, because Noah, his his three sons and their four wives were all spared. The full wrath of God didn't happen in the flood, even though it did a lot of damage. So imagine for 6 hours hanging on the cross, Jesus has experienced the full wrath of God. So he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he knows more than anyone else what that's going to be like. He prays to the Father, if you're willing, remove this cup from me, right? And the cup was essentially the cup of God's wrath, the punishment for sins that he didn't do. And he prays this 3 times. An angel comes to strengthen him and so forth. I think what's happened is many modern, particularly American evangelicals, mainline, have made a theology out of this prayer. And in a way that I don't think is good. I think many of us want a faith that doesn't have any suffering in it. So we make a theology out of Jesus saying, remove this cup from me, right? We kind of want the same thing. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we should desire suffering or all of that, but we embrace it as part of the process in which we grow. But I've seen so many believers, especially coming out of COVID, have spent 2 years sowing to a lack of suffering. And it's like for 2 years, it basically became normal people understanding that, hey, you're not going to go to church because you're afraid of a particular of COVID. And so all churches everywhere kind of adjusted with how they do things, and it was necessary and it was fine. But what happened is that what we did as a result of a pandemic in a crisis moment, that crisis has now become what people think should be normal. And I'm not even talking about like suffering. I'm talking about just anything that makes me somewhat uncomfortable. Now, there are people who have legitimate concerns, health stuff that they think, hey, but a lot of us, it's not even about fear of comfort, COVID anymore. It's fear of the loss of comfort. We didn't have to do anything, and everyone understood that. And now there's an expectation. And so everything is about, you know, wanting to be saved, take this away from me. People not even wanting to go back to work now, wanting to be. There's a sense where I think we've made a theology out of a prayer that Jesus was praying just between him and the Father because he was going to experience the full wrath of God. And now it's become an ideology that many believers are expecting. And when they don't get that from God, you'll see people walk away from the faith. There's this idea, no one's saying this with their mouth, but there's an idea like, Father, take this cup from me. Like, take away this trial, take away this suffering, take away the possibility that I may have to go through something I don't like, or even take away this. I think what I would say now, what people are really wanting is take away the normal responsibilities of what it means to follow you and the normal sacrifices. So it's not even just take this cup from me in terms of suffering, it's take this cup away in terms of sacrifices. Like, see, in that prayer, Jesus was the sacrifice. And what people, believers, I think, are now wanting is to no longer have to sacrifice. So they don't want to sacrifice. So they're not going to be the sacrifice like Jesus was, but they don't want to sacrifice. So things that have always been what you would just normally do because you're a believer are now like really things that tempt you, that your leaders are expecting you to do that you did in 2019. And so it's just fascinating when you really look at, COVID wasn't just a pandemic, it was a revealer, right? God used it to reveal a lot. And I just feel like, wow, I think a lot of believers have made an ideology, a theology of Jesus's prayer, take this cup from me, take this sacrifice from me. They're basically saying, take away me having to have a sacrificial Christianity. I don't want to go back to church. I don't want to serve in church. I don't want to do the things that are part of just the life of the church. And so there's much more I would say, but I just wanted to put this thought out there. If you resonate with it, cool. If you don't like it, cool. I'm gonna be the same either way, and enjoying this nice weather and getting some good photography shots in. And so, for one last time, this is Kurt Kennedy, just out here in San Francisco at the beach. Just had a great meal. Actually, to be honest, it actually wasn't a great meal. It was one of those meals where it's a fancy restaurant and you order something like salmon and you think you're going to get this, and then it comes in and it looks like it's like this big. So it's one of those places where you pay. I'm glad my friend paid. You pay over $100 for an appetizer and an entree that's this big, and you leave, and now you got to go to Subway and get something to eat. That's pretty crazy. But anyway, just some thoughts, food for thought for you guys. I think it's unbiblical to say what Jesus said if it means take the sacrifices away from me, take the ordinary responsibilities that I would have as a Christian. I mean, what's next? Hey, I'm tired of being a mom or a dad. I'm tired of take this away from me too. Like, I'm tired. I mean, there's so many things happening. I'm tired of working my job. I'm tired of being married. I'm tired of, it's the great resignation is not just an economic, you know, career removal of those things. This great resignation, I think, has spread to resigning from living and having to sacrifice things that were normally a part of what you would do for the Lord. And so stop saying that. We should not be saying and having, that's not an ideology. It was very specific for the Savior. It's not something that we should be trying to live out. So anyway, for what it's worth, I'm Kirk Kennedy, signing off.